Well, here I am for a few days in Prince Edward Island, one of the Atlantic provinces of Canada. It's nice to be in a sort of rural hinterland, although you can hear the ominous storm clouds in the distance. It's a pleasure, though, to be relieved of Trumpian madness, albeit it was rather pleasing to note that Scott Pruitt, the Environmental Protection Agency head, had to resign yesterday. That little piece of vermin constantly in cahoots with the oil and gas companies to the detriment of the environment. But there is one thing that couldn't escape me. Just yesterday on the radio, I heard, as everybody knows, that perhaps over 2,000 of those children, wrenched from the bosom of their families, might never be reunited. And a thought occurred to me that I'd like to share if you will bear with me. There's something called the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's the single most honored international covenant that exists in the whole panoply of human rights law. It has been ratified by every single country on the planet with the exception of the United States. But, and it's an important but, Hillary Clinton announced many years ago on the occasion of the funeral of a former executive director of UNICEF that the United States had signed the convention. Now, signing doesn't make it a matter of domestic law, but it does mean that the contents of the convention should be honored by the country that signed it. So if you'll bear with me, I want to read to you two of the decisive articles from the convention. First, Article 2, subsection 2. States parties shall take all appropriate measures to secure that the child is protected against all forms of discrimination or punishment on the basis of the status, activities, expressed opinions, or beliefs of the child's parents, legal guardians, or family members. In other words, the child's right to escape discrimination has been entirely violated by Trump's separation of the families. Article 3, sub 1, and this is the single most important clause of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it says, in all actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, or courts of law, or administrative authorities, or legislative bodies, the best interests of the child shall be a primary consideration. Well, clearly, the best interests of the child were no consideration whatsoever. Does this mean anything in the grand scheme of things, in the grand pageant of life? Well, yes, it does. It means that Donald Trump not only thumbs his nose and repudiates domestic law in the United States, but he also has absolute contempt for any of the international norms which should govern human behavior. It demonstrates again the sort of haunting iniquity of the moral vacuum in the White House. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.